Hey, how's it going? This is Pythagoras, and I know it's been a while since I've been online or uploaded anything. Just wanted to let you know I'm still alive. I've had a lot going on, just in personal life, in the real world and all that. But I just wanted to say hi real quick. I'm turning 40 tomorrow. They say life begins at 40, so um, I guess it's an interesting birthday. We'll see. But I also wanted to let you know that I'm going to be starting a second channel. It could be more like a live stream channel where I can just kind of go off the cuff, talk off the top of my head about pretty much whatever's on my mind, unscripted, raw. Uh, and then this channel, I'm just going to use it for when I have topics that I want to do more of a deep dive in. Kind of keep it a little bit more scripted, a little bit more what you have come to expect from Illuminatus Pythagoras or whatever. But if you want to see, uh, just some more regular content, I don't know, depending on how busy I am, I might upload, a couple times a week, maybe sometimes more, maybe sometimes less, more rambling, ranting kind of stuff, just everyday life kind of stuff, but also talking about some of the same kinds of things that I talk about this channel, just in a less formal way. So I'm going to post a link to the new channel I'm creating there. It's just going to be called The Real Pythagoras. And I'm pretty much just gonna be uploading stuff kinda like this, unscheduled live streams. Oh, I just realized, so YouTube keeps changing stuff in Studio, so now I just realized I can actually see live chats. So, hey, BTC Bear, what's up? And thanks for the birthday wishes, BTC, Christine, etc. And yeah, I'm planning a lot of new stuff. Of course, I'm still working on the sacred discourse. I have more written than I've uploaded, but kind of the idea is, no one wants to buy the cow if they get the milk for free. So far, everything I've published, I've just published for free up on YouTube, including my, music album, which I spent a lot of money having professionally produced and recorded in studio and all that. Um, Not sold very many copies, but that's okay. Sacred Discourse. Once I finish it, I've been saying this for a while. My planned publish date is going to be Christmas of 2020. I had planned originally to have it completely finished by today. I started working on it August 13th, my birthday last year, and I planned to finish it in 1 year. That was kind of the deadline I gave myself, but self-imposed deadlines only go so far. Sometimes things just take as long as they take, but I am still planning to have it finished and published by Christmas. It might take me a couple months longer than I had planned to finish the last couple of chapters. Inspiration just kind of dried up a little bit for a while. But yeah, I've been working a lot. And of course, with COVID stuff, that's been interesting. Hope everyone's doing well, by the way. But well, since there are actually a couple people in live chat, I had planned on just doing kind of like a real quick, hey, check out my new second channel, I'm not dead, kind of thing, and then logging off. But if there's a couple people on, I am kind of looking at comments. So if anyone says anything on there, I'll probably like respond to it. If anyone has questions, I guess, just do kind of like an informal little live stream part of it. It seems like to me that at least one major component, um, it's kind of all about the deep state kind of taking power back. Um, Trump really makes them nervous. I know that's kind of a like whole controversial rabbit hole to go down, anything to do with Trump. But whatever you think about Orange Man, Hollywood hates him, the mainstream media hates him, uh, a lot of old world order or elite or deep state types hate him, and that's enough for me to kind of cheer for him a little bit. If nothing else, the enemy of my enemies is my friend. Whether you actually think he's your friend or on your side or whatever. But a lot of people really don't want him to get reelected. They really want to get their deep state puppets back in and all that. And I think COVID is kind of a way of doing that. I think, Trump support was at an all-time high. Probably they're thinking that if they crash the economy, Trump won't have as much support and maybe won't get reelected. I think they also think that all the lockdown stuff will allow them to push this mail-in voter uh, or mail-in voting stuff so they can, basically rig and try to steal the election. Because no one is actually voting for Sleepy Joe and Camel Toe Harris or whatever her name is. So that's kind of my thoughts on coronavirus. I mean, if you want to go deeper, I haven't seen anything really solid, but I do kind of tend to be of the opinion that initially it probably was kind of a bio weapon that was released, whether intentionally or not. I don't want to get too deep into tinfoil hat wearing territory right now, but I think it's possible that China may have even uh, intended to hurt the U.S. in particular with it. I'm not 100% sure about that, but I think there's probably more there. Then at the same time, I'm really not that worried about it. If you actually look at the numbers, yes, I mean America does have more infections or reported cases than anywhere else, which you might make you think that maybe that was the target all along. Um, but then, like some people are saying, it's also just because they're doing more testing. You know what I'm saying? Uh, the more rocks you turn under, the more bugs you find under them. You don't find as many bugs under rocks you haven't turned over. Maybe that's not the most brilliant metaphor ever, but if you get what I'm saying. But I'm not that worried about it. I don't think it's as dangerous as a lot of people are saying. I mean, I wouldn't go so far as saying it's a hoax, like some people do. Obviously, it is a virus, it is real. Quite possibly it was a, bio weapon or something, who knows? I don't want to get too deep into that kind of stuff right now. I'm just kind of celebrating the end of my 39th year, having a couple of Budweisers. What other channel where? So I'm going to post a link. That was really the whole reason I got on. I was just going to say hi real quick, post a link to new channel, but I just created it, so it's going to be called The Real Pythagoras. I don't really have it completely set up. I haven't published anything on it yet. But kind of the idea is just to have a second channel where I can just kind of live stream and rant, kind of ramble, say stuff that's on my mind that might not be within the parameters of what I originally had in mind for this channel. On this channel, I don't go unscripted very much. Uh, and that's just because I tend to think that if something's worth saying, it's worth thinking it out before you say it. I'm not a big believer in just publishing something that you're just kind of vomiting out of your mouth as you go. Um, the French political compass. But yeah, I will post a link to the other channel. And like I said, I probably will publish more regularly there, since my standard for what's good enough to publish on there is going to be a little bit different. It's kind of going to be more like just turning on the, laptop or whatever, and it's kind of talking about whatever's on my mind, kind of unscripted. Not everything's going to be real deep. It's not going to be all esoteric philosophy, you know, political discourse and conspiracy theory type stuff or whatever. Sometimes it might just be me talking about life or venting about something or rambling about something stupid I heard or saw. I have no idea, but it's going to be kind of an outlet for me more than anything. Just a chance to kind of be a little bit more down to earth. Just kind of like talk about stuff. Hopefully, be a little bit more interactional. Publish more regularly. Then, I mean, the flip side of that is not going to be, if you're publishing regularly and just turning on the camera and saying whatever's on your mind, it's not going to be as good as like formally structured logical arguments about some deeply researched topic or something like that. But I mean, this is social media. It's just kind of being social is kind of how I see it, I guess. But, I actually kinda like the way they have this new chat thing set up because before, I was actually really struggling to try to see the live chat while I was streaming because I have done a couple of these before. Now it just pops up right there. I can kinda see comments as they post and talk about stuff. Um, but yeah, man, I really didn't have a whole ton to say other than that planned. I was mainly just kind of, I guess, wishing myself a happy birthday or giving other people the chance to. And then just letting you know that I'm planning to, start a second channel that's just going to be real informal. I probably will do a lot of live streams on there. It's kind of like respond to comments and stuff like that. Um, but don't expect like anything too highbrow. So, but I've had a lot going on lately. Started a new job about pretty close to a year ago, and starting to do pretty well there. The last few months, even with COVID, I'm doing like some sales stuff. And I mean, I've always kind of had a gift for persuasion, I guess you could say. So, I mean, if I've done a few sales jobs before, but the last couple of months was like the first month that I hit 100,000. So, I mean, that felt pretty good. I'm not saying my take home check was 100,000. I'm saying I hit 100,000 in sales. So I'm actually kind of doing pretty good right now. Um, moving into a new place tomorrow, actually. Tomorrow is also my birthday, so there's kind of a lot of cool stuff going on right now. Meme analysis. So I'm gonna read this comment. Some guy with a channel called Meme Analysis is filling the void you left. He's basically takes popular memes and does mental gymnastics to pretend there's a hidden meaning to it. That's your public. Yeah, I actually do enjoy that kind of stuff. I think it's fun to read way more into something than is actually there. At the same time, I think sometimes, especially in media, Hollywood, music, and that kind of stuff, a lot of times when you read too deeply into something, I think sometimes there is actually stuff there because that's all propaganda. I think they do have a lot of almost like subliminal conditioning kind of stuff kind of worked in there, and they do it on purpose. Um, and thanks, Ricardo, for saying happy birthday. Um, yeah, I'm probably about to bounce. Probably just like watch some Netflix, drink a couple of Budweisers or whatever. I don't drink a lot. I don't encourage you to go out and drink, irresponsibly or whatever. Every now and then it's kind of nice though. So I guess have a good night unless anyone else has any like questions or comments they'd like me to respond to while I'm here. Yeah, I mean, that's kind of interesting. So Gustavo S says, what I mean is the kids are craving for meaning and answers. You got plenty of them, but you need to be underhanded to get their attention. Those people would love you if they knew you. Yeah, I actually think there's a lot to that. And I think that's one of the reasons why the mysteries have always kind of played so coy. Because I think a lot of times the answers that people are looking for, if they're presented too plainly, people have a tendency to reject it if it's offered too easily. And sometimes the truth is so simple and we want it to be more complicated than it is. Uh, so sometimes simple truths have to be wrapped in needlessly complex mysteries um, just in order to not be overlooked. And I think over the centuries, different people have come up with different ways of doing that. Some of them pretty entertaining. Um, I mean, just as an example, uh, Madame Blavatsky or whatever. Now, I'm not a huge fan of hers or, not a necessarily a huge fan of the Theosophical movement and all that, but I have read some, Theosophical literature. I have read some of, Blavatsky's work, and I think some of it's undoubtedly, of a really high quality. I do think she was a genius, and I think she was also a little bit of a showman, and the same could be said of Crowley and a lot of other people in the occult. Um, so I've said before that, I think Blavatsky was a fake. By that I mean like she was in a time where there was a lot of interest in like mediumship and like channeling and all this kind of stuff. And so like I mean I think she did kind of put on a show, uh, just like a lot of other people do. Um, but I think that's part of a tradition that goes back, way into India, like the ancient yogis and stuff. Undoubtedly, they were teaching esoteric wisdom, but they also used kind of like cheap magic tricks or whatever to kind of draw a crowd because people have always been impressed by signs and wonders and miracles. And I think that's kind of how a lot of the art of magic or like illusion kind of got started. Okay. So Simon says, that sounds funny somehow. Simon says, how to know if you know something, how to know if you're not repeating what you heard. I think the fact that you would ask the question is kind of a beginning. I mean, most people that are just kind of mindlessly regurgitating what they've been spoon fed don't really reflect on it or like have much questioning about that. It's just like, Orange Man bad, for example, and they never really stop to think, hey, do I just think Orange Man is bad and Trump is racist and all this because I hear it mind numbingly repeated on the mainstream media and all this kind of stuff. Have you ever made any research into Manichaeism? It would be great. Well, I mean, in general, I've always been real interested in the Gnostic tradition, really broadly defined. And, obviously, Manny is a part of that. Uh, I wouldn't claim to be any kind of expert on that, like, school in particular, but it seems to me that Manny, like a lot of other people, Pythagoras and others, kind of studied a lot of different religious traditions and schools of thought during his time, and he kind of had his own take on it. He kind of synthesized it all in his own way, and so I mean, in that way, it's another uh, synthetic kind of system, kind of like Pythagoreanism or a lot of other systems out there. It seems to me he was influenced by Zoroastrianism and a lot of other traditions. And I think that's kind of cool. I'm not going to say I've studied it super deeply though. And Porphyrios, thanks for wishing me a happy birthday. Feeling kind of old, but uh, not that old. 40, when I was in my 20s, I used to think 40 was ancient. And of course, I've kind of got some devil horns up here now. But I mean, still got the 16-inch biceps and stuff too. Working on 17, hopefully by the end of the year, but And I'm just kind of looking at comments. I'm looking to see if anyone has anything to say. I'm just kind of hanging out right now, honestly. Like I said before, I really just planned on logging on real quick, just kind of mentioning that I'm starting a second channel. Um, So Ricardo says only direct personal experience brings knowledge. Only then can we say we know something. Yeah, I would tend to agree. But, if you want to get kind of meta here, I could ask, well, have you heard someone else tell you that only direct personal experience brings knowledge? Or have you realized for yourself that only experience brings knowledge? Um, hmm. This is kind of interesting. Gustavo is asking a question. I'm not sure I'm super familiar with. Last point of reference of the beyond I got was the idea of Mahapralaya. I'm pretty sure that's a Buddhist term that I've heard before, but off the top of my head, I'm drawing a blank. And the Citra Ara. Pretty sure that's from maybe Hinduism. The only beyond that I could find, so by now, what's the furthest point you could reach spiritually? The idea of like what is the ultimate destination of a spiritual journey or something is actually something I've kind of given a lot of thought to in the past. And then, when you consider questions like what does it mean to be enlightened, for example, um, some people would think that enlightenment is reaching the final or ultimate stage of spiritual development. As I kind of said in the intro to the sacred discourse, I almost think of that in a upside down kind of way. I tend to think of enlightenment more as the beginning of a true spiritual journey. Um, so some people think in terms of there being a path toward enlightenment. I think more in terms of enlightenment itself as being the path, and what people are actually seeking is the path itself. So there's the kind of journey that ultimately leads you toward the path, um, and then like once you reach the path, that's like to my way of thinking, like that's actually enlightenment. That's all I really mean when I talk about enlightenment. Um, so all right, like in Buddhism, there is the Soto school and the Rinzai school, for example. There's the idea of sudden enlightenment versus gradual enlightenment. I think you kind of find that everywhere. In the Western tradition, kind of in the mysteries, it seems like they've kind of favored some form of the gradual enlightenment, the idea of enlightenment by degrees. The way I reconcile those two ideas, because I think they're both valid, I think in terms of a light with a dimmer switch. So you can go from the dimmest the light can go to the brightest, and there's degrees of illumination there. But in terms of whether the light is on or off, that's a black and white issue. So at one point, the dimmer switch is turned all the way, one way, and the light is off. As soon as you barely turn it a little bit, there's a moment where there is illumination now. It might be very dim, but you've gone from darkness to light. And once the light has come on, yes, it grows brighter by degrees, but the illumination itself, when you actually go from um, like darkness to light, from ignorance to knowledge, yeah, knowledge can increase, but that's different from a state of pure ignorance. I mean, think in terms of, going from 0 to 1. It like, on a number line, going from 0 to 1 is the biggest jump if you think about it, because that's 0, to it's going from nothing to something. How do you get from 0 to 1? Going from 1 to 2 is not such a big deal. All you're doing is taking what you already have and doubling it, right? 1 times 2 is 2, but, you can double 0 and you've still got 0, you know what I'm saying? So, maybe that's another way of thinking of the gradual versus sudden enlightenment debate. And again, thanks for the birthday wishes, death by astonishment, and let's see. Someone said that hurt my ears. Hopefully, I didn't make some terrible sound or something like that. Maybe it was just like my semi-coherent rambling that you're talking about. Um, thoughts on Okay, someone's asking my thoughts on pedophilia and why would so many people on top be pedophiles? I actually do have some thoughts on that. Um, I mean, my thoughts on pedophilia are simple. It's sick, it's disgusting. Don't do it. If you do, you should be like brutally murdered, have your head stomped in or something like that. But why would so many people on top be pedophiles? Here's the short answer. I don't think it's a coincidence. I don't think that there's any kind of like correlation between proclivity toward pedophilia and traits that make someone a successful politician or leader. I think that the puppet masters that actually control things behind the scenes have quite a bit of control over who gets into different positions of power. Not absolute control. I think Trump is, evidence of that. I think someone like JFK, who they decided they have had to assassinate, is evidence of that. So people do get through. It's not like no one gets into any position of influence and power without without the mark of the beast, so to speak. But they do exercise quite a bit of control, and one of the ways they do that, I think, is by promoting people to positions of power that they have something on, that they have leverage over, that they've got some kind of dirt on that they can blackmail them with. And I think just because of the horrific nature of pedophilia and just like the shock value that has for most people, I think it's hard to think of a deeper, darker secret that someone could have than that they are a pedophile. And I think that is the simple and obvious reason why we find so many closeted pedophiles in positions of power. Um, because I think people that get into positions of power that are put there by the powers that be, I think they tend to be people that have really dark secrets, and that is one very, very dark secret, I think. Um, Someone's asking mathematical significance of the Eye of Horus. That's actually not hard to look up, but there are actually a lot of mathematical ratios contained within the glyph. Like, I mean, in this like tattoo on my palm, that actually encodes the Vesica Piscis and the Fibonacci sequence, for example. So I think the people that designed the Eye of Horus maybe had a similar idea. There's more ratios there, but I mean here, for example, if you go from the center of the pupil, uh, imagine a dot at the center of the pupil, add one half to the other half, you get the width of the iris. Add half of the uh, measure of the iris to the width of the I'm sorry, half of the width of the pupil to the width of the iris. You get the measure of the cornea, so that's 1, 1, 2, 3. Starts the Fibonacci sequence. And then, of course, I mean, a lot of people will recognize the outer shape as the vesica piscis or the measure of the fish. It's like, the shape you get when two circles intersect so that the vertex of one passes through the circumference of the other, forming a ratio of 153 to 265. So I think it was Archimedes that gave it kind of the nickname, the measure of the fish. And it's kind of interesting that, you have that story about, Pythagoras encountering the fishermen, and he makes a wager with them that he can guess how many fish are in the net. And if he guesses correctly, they've got to let them all go. He guesses that there's 153. It's kind of interesting to me that in the New Testament, you've got a similar story, several hundred years later, uh, where, Jesus appears on the beach to the disciples. They've been fishing all night. And there's another instance where there's 153 fish in the net. It says the number or the measure of the fish in the net is 153. Well, that's kind of an interesting number considering that the measure of the fish, the Vesica piscis, is a ratio of 153 to 265. So, I mean, if you get into sacred geometry, you'll probably find a lot of interesting things that different people have to say about that shape. But it's one in any case that you'll find showing up in a lot of temple constructions and that kind of thing. And again, Platinum Knight, thanks for the birthday wishes. And Common Sense Philosophy, again, thanks for the birthday wishes. So, yeah, if it's my birthday, obviously I'm a Leo. Um, and yes, that's a tattoo. And so is this. I don't know if that even shows. Um, amnesia. Yeah, Ricardo says from amnesia to wakefulness, that's illumination. Yeah, earlier mentioned, Plato had the idea that all learning is actually remembering. Kind of the same idea there. Um, I tend to agree. Well, I've been on for a little while, and again, all I really got on to say was basically that I'm just repeating real quick. I basically just got on to say that number one, I'm not dead. Rumors of my death have been greatly exaggerated, and number two, I'm starting a second channel. As soon as I close this, I will post a link to my second channel, kind of in the description. Maybe pin it to the top of the comments too. But again, the idea of second channel, I'll probably do a lot of stuff like this where I just kind of do live streams, hangouts, maybe post videos where I just kind of talk off the top of my head a little bit instead of like doing scripted videos with kind of dry, formal, logical arguments and stuff like I tend to do. Um, Pessimistic Idealism asks, would you be interested in joining an idealist Discord? I've never been very involved in social media. Uh, I think it's really good for your mental health not to be. Then again, I think there's also value in connecting with like-minded people. Um, so from time to time, I have like kind of uh, lurked around, a few Facebook groups and stuff like that. Back when Facebook didn't completely suck, and let's be honest, YouTube kind of sucks now too. Discord is one of the platforms that I kind of see some potential in. I don't actually have a Discord. I might think about joining, but yeah, I mean, if you have like some kind of group, feel free to send me a link. I might check it out. But I tend not to get super involved in any kind of social media kind of stuff. I do not have a Snapchat or an Instagram or any of that stuff, and I just prefer not to. Um, for a while, I got like overly involved in Facebook because it does kind of have a way of sucking you in. But I realized most of it is like you end up having fruitless flame wars with strangers who you will never meet, who have absolutely nothing to do with your life. You know what I mean? Like the fact that they have these stupid ideas is completely inconsequential to you. Um, and you're never going to change their mind about anything. But it's just, it has this way of sucking you in. And it's so easy for us to get like kind of heated and get pulled into these like pointless, like political arguments. I won't say debates, I'm just saying arguments. Because I do think there's a lot of value in debate. But what goes on Facebook and even on YouTube and stuff for the most part is really not intelligent debate. Um, and I mean, a few times I've like tried to get various other people to actually debate me, like an actual like structured, formal kind of debate. Most people don't want to. They would rather just like leave like ridiculous like comments But that's YouTube. You can't really expect too much from it. Um, could anti-cosmic Gnosticism be coined as a term? I mean, it sounds cool. I guess you're the one that coined the term, so you kinda get to define it, I guess. As in to purposefully exterminate humans or lower their sentience to primal levels to extinguish the light on Earth. Would moksha be achieved? No, uh, I mean, that's not my opinion anyway. It is something I've given thought to. Let me answer it in this way, and I will probably end with this unless, like, some other interesting comment pops up and hooks me. Imagine that you are running in a track meet. I mean, the track that you're running around is circular, maybe oval, but I mean, let's just call it circular. In any case, the finish line is the starting line, essentially. You start off from a certain point, you run around to the circle, and you come back to where you kind of began before everybody else, and so you're number one. Well, what if you had a very slow runner, uh, or just someone that was of the mindset that, hey, maybe I can cheat? So the pistol fires, the race begins, the runners all take off, doing their lap or 4 laps or whatever it is around the track. By the way, any rednecks, you can substitute NASCAR. I'm just thinking more in terms of like Olympics or track meets or whatever. But you might be tempted to think, hey, everyone's running around in a circle to get. Well, no, because that's not really the point. I mean, I tend to think that almost all of our journeys through life tends to be kind of circular in the sense that we're ultimately led back to where we began, but the process changes us, and that's the whole point. So, I mean, when you talk about like moksha and all this, I because I'm not Indian, I tend not to use a lot of words like samsara and moksha and all that. I try to just think of what am I actually saying it and how would I actually talk about that. Um, so I mean, you have a state of kind of primordial oneness or something like we see in a lot of traditions, and then one way or another, somehow that oneness becomes splintered and fractured, and multiplicity arises or whatever. And most spiritual traditions kind of teach return to oneness in some sense. I mean, even Christianity, if you look a little bit deeper, is basically saying the same thing. It's saying that the fall had something to do with man being separated from God, right? And salvation has to do with being uh, uh, reunited or being made right with God again, right? I mean, this is kind of the idea. And does that mean that, I mean, if we were to stick to like kind of the Christian tradition or whatever, does that mean that things would be better off if Adam and Eve had never ate the fruit or whatever, you know? Well, I mean, even in Christianity, I think it was maybe Augustine that had the idea of the fortunate fall and that it's all ultimately part of a plan. Like, um, man, that's a little bit heady. That's a little bit more heady than I want to get right now. But no, I do think there's people that kind of think that way. The interesting question is like some of these people that want to kind of dumb down society and kind of turn people into mindless automatons and all that, are they motivated perhaps by an ideology kind of like that? Like, what Gustavo is calling anti-cosmic Gnosticism. I don't know. It's an interesting term. It's kind of a interesting idea to kind of reflect on, but no, I don't think that going backwards is the way forward. Let's see. Oh shit! Someone asked another question that kind of hooked me again. So Simon asked, "What does the Fall of Sophia song Go North mean?" I mean, starting out kind of generally, number one, that was a I actually wrote the lyrics to that song like quite a while back. I was probably like 20 or 21. And I was honestly not in a real great place in my life at that time. When I wrote it, I still remember very clearly. I was pretty high and throwing up, and everything was spinning around. I was outside, like by myself, and so I mean, the first line, "The Earth spins on an axis I can't see." Um, I don't know. The whole thing kind of was about like everything spinning, kind of the meaninglessness of it all. Like and finding a point of, stillness, I guess. I think a lot of people use the North Star as a metaphor in that way, something that kinda gives a sense of direction in a, uh like, when they're lost at sea or whatever. It's one of those songs, though, that, like, some of the lyrics in it, they came to mean things to me later that they probably didn't mean when I first wrote it. Um So it's kind of a hard question to answer. I've given some thought to actually like doing like maybe a series of videos or something, like discussing different songs on the album and lyrics and kind of talking about, you know, what some of that stuff means too. But so Cody says, I haven't listened to you a long while. You swolled up and shaved your head. Uh, plus, happy birthday. Um, I actually just hit 200 pounds, so this is actually the biggest I've ever been. But, body fat's still reasonably low. I'm not, quite as lean as I was in some of the channel art pictures I took, like, a couple years back, but then I was carb depleting and a lot of other stuff there to just get a really lean, look, really have some of the cuts in the abs show and stuff like that. But, with COVID and all that, it kinda took me out of the gym for a little while. I kinda started to get a little bit soft around the midsection and all that kinda stuff, but, started hitting the weights again now. I actually do think that, working out is kind of, more important than some people think. Gustavo says, "I agree with Cody. I thought you were thin as a stick, like sticks. I'm not gonna knock on sticks." I've kinda watched some of his videos. He's actually got some interesting stuff to say sometimes. I think probably, I probably have a lot of common ground with him. I probably disagree with him about some stuff, but, um, you know, everyone's got their own style, I guess. And I can make fun of people without actually having anything against them. But no, I wouldn't say that I'm a thin guy by any means. I did a lot of MMA in my life, like about 25 years, mixed martial arts and stuff. Was always really into weightlifting and stuff. Eat about 200 grams of protein a day. So I tend to stay fairly thick. Let's see. He turned establishment now, don't worry. I guess he's talking about Sticks. What's his name? Like Sticks 666 Hammer or something like that. I don't know. I haven't like looked at him for a while. I think almost anyone that's still on YouTube publishing that hasn't been um like sent off to the gulags yet or whatever, probably has had to tone down some of what they're saying. And I tend not to be real judgmental about that because the thing is about some of these YouTubers, I'm not saying Sticks, or anyone in particular, but, some of them, they've kind of built up their YouTube channel to be like their primary source of income, you know? And When censorship gets really bad, if you don't have a successful YouTube channel, and if you're not in a position where your livelihood, depends on not getting demonetized and not getting, banned and all that kind of stuff, then it's real easy to judge. But like, I'm actually a little bit, I think, understanding towards some of like these big YouTube channels that kind of decide to tone it down a little bit or maybe even switch positions on some because they're trying to survive. Um, just the fact that I'm such a small fish on YouTube just kind of gives me a lot more flexibility. I have never once complained about being demonetized because none of my videos have ever been monetized in the first place. So I really don't make anything publishing videos. Here and there, a few people have like maybe sent some donations on PayPal. And, some of them have actually been like surprisingly large donations, and that's helped. It's allowed me to invest in things like the acoustic treatment for walls so I can get slightly better recording. Bought a condenser microphone and stuff that I've been using to record sacred discourse. Uh, right now, I'm just using like a little Surface Pro with the webcam built in. So, what is a psychic entertainer? I'm not sure where that came from. Are you asking because how you like? Did I mention at one point that I used to be a psychic? Kind of like I did like a video series, like Confessions of a Former Pickup Artist or something like that. I gave some thought to doing one video, maybe more than one video about my life as a professional psychic, mind reader, and stuff. Because it was an interesting chapter in my life, I guess you would say. No, I don't claim to actually be psychic, but if you're really clever, you can still put on a pretty convincing act. And I mean, before I kind of decided to take a break from it, I had actually got to the point where like Fortune 500 companies would sometimes fly me places or pay me to travel out of state to go to some kind of like big black tie event, sometimes with hundreds or thousands of people. And I mean, I would be paid like half a grand or more per hour to uh, pretend to be a psychic mind reader in front of like all these like lawyers and CEOs and all that kind of stuff. Um, like I did one New Year's party. It was like a house party, but when I pulled up to the house, let me put it this way: they had a like butler or something like that come up on a golf cart to pick me up at the gate and drive me to the front door. It was like I was at, like, fucking Wayne Manor or something like that. But yeah, like, at that party, that was, like, a few years back, and this was, like, before Trump had even, like, won the Republican nomination, and people thought he was still a joke, and, I usually did a Q&A part in my act where people would ask me questions and I would answer them, and someone asked me, like, who would be the next president, and I said, "Trump." Predicted that Trump would win or whatever. But let's see. And Eric, thanks for the birthday wishes. And let's see. And Ocean Machine. I haven't seen you post on comments before. This is the thing that throws me off about YouTube because there's people that like watch a lot of videos or like post stuff on there, and some of them I'll recognize, and then some I won't. because sometimes people use different IDs and stuff like that. Um, but tell you what, maybe like if anyone else has any like kind of interesting questions or comments, I'll respond to real quick because I don't really have much else to do. Like I said, I'm just kind of chilling tonight. I'm probably just gonna drink a couple of more Budweisers and watch some Netflix or something like that. Again, I didn't think I was gonna be on here. I'm at 51 minutes so far, but I see people hang up, like log on to the chat. They're posting comments. Like I'll hang out. I don't care. But I will remind, just in case anyone's new, as soon as I like kind of log off and post this, I am gonna post like a little link to a second channel I'm starting. It's gonna be real informal. Name of the channel is The Real Pythagoras. It's kind of gonna be more like this. I probably will do more interactive live streams and stuff like that. Sometimes I might just turn on the camera, kind of shoot the shit, talk off the top of the dome about whatever's on my mind or whatever. Okay. Gustavo says, why don't you go to the X board? I'm not real sure what that is, and just fish everyone up. Why don't you create hubs so your followers can discuss and spread your content? Um, I've mentioned this before. One of the things that I would like to do, and that I actually kind of made some like some it's something I've put my feelers out on before. Like I would like to kind of create more of uh, online community kind of thing that ideally would eventually branch out into more of a like IRL kind of community because I think crave actual human connection. And I think finding communities to be a part of online is better than nothing. But I think it's, ultimately kind of unsatisfying. It's not really how we're wired. It's not really what, we're ultimately looking for. Um, oh, okay. So it's X or whatever is 4chan's paranormal board. They post about you there sometimes, me included. Oh, really? That's every now and then I will Google Illuminatus Pythagoras just to see if I can see anything like posted about me. I'm too stupid to use 8chan or 4chan or whatever. Well, maybe not too stupid. I'm just not real like I'm not a hacker or any kind of super like computer literate kind of person. Um, it'd be interesting if there's any way of like sending me any kind of link or something. I'm always kind of curious, to hear what people are saying because when I put stuff out there, I never really know how people are going to take it or how people are going to respond to it or whatever. I've seen some pretty weird stuff published about me before where I'm like, where the hell did that come from? But and Simon says, what is magic? What does it mean to have access to unconsciousness? A more formal kind of video where I sit down and kind of script something out. Um, but it's interesting, like to think about what the word magic has come to mean versus what it probably originally meant. Um, like, I mean, the Magi were the kind of priest of the mystery schools of Persia. Maybe someone can tell me if I'm wrong, but didn't it basically mean something like wise men or something like that? Like, isn't that why, like, in the nativity story and stuff, the 3 magi or the 3 wise men, the terms are kinda used interchangeably? It's interesting too, like, I mean, if you look at the, like, construction of words, like, the same kinda root word in magic is also kind of the same as the root word in imagination. Um, And Ocean Machine says your videos on metaphysics, Gnosticism, and socio-psychology. That's an interesting term. Are my favorite ones. Yeah, metaphysics, and especially kind of a Gnostic flavored metaphysics, is probably what I found myself the most drawn to, just in terms of like kind of what I've read, studied, thought about over most of my life. Um, so many branches to it. But like for me, I think all of philosophy kind of begins and ends in some ways with metaphysics. Um, I mean, if anyone's listened to some of what I have to say about moral philosophy, for example, you know that my moral philosophy is deeply rooted in my metaphysics. If my metaphysics is wrong, then my moral philosophy is wrong. If my metaphysics is true, then my moral philosophy is necessarily true. There's no avoiding it. The two are inseparably linked. One implies the other. And that's probably why I've spent so much time talking about metaphysics, because the ground of being is where everything must be grounded, um, if it's to be grounded in anything. And of course, if something like morality is not grounded in anything, then you can't be a moral realist. You've got to be like a moral relativist. And I think that's absolutely terrible. I think moral relativism and nihilism are some of the great um, intellectual evils of our time. And I think that a lot of the evil we see in the world is just an outgrowth of thoughts, ideas. If there's a sickness in your thought, if there's a sickness in the ideas that you hold, I mean, behaviors are going to follow from those thoughts. Behaviors are going to follow from those ideas. Um, People who rise to power are going to begin trying to shape society around the ideas that they hold. And if those ideas are deeply flawed, then the kinds of societies and systems that they create are also going to be deeply flawed and potentially evil. Um, and that's why I do think there's a lot of practical value to philosophy and metaphysics, even though a lot of people kind of want to shit on metaphysics, like, oh, that's just like woo woo stuff that has no pragmatic value. I strongly disagree. I think that has to be the starting point, and that's why I've spent so much time kind of trying to address it. But then I think some people make the mistake of getting so bogged down in metaphysics that they aren't able to connect the dots and kind of draw a line to what that actually means in an everyday sense. You know, like um, how should these metaphysical ideas affect the way you live your life, or like move in the world, or attempt to create change in society, and so on. Interesting. So, poo poo says the root mag means to enlarge and to make greater. Um, that's definitely true, like, as in magnify and so on. Um, you know, even, like, the word, like, majestic, which is probably related to the same root word that we find in, like, mage and magic. Yeah, that's an interesting point. So, I guess, like, the magi would be kinda like the great ones or the exalted ones, the magnified ones. Of course, like, in a like Zoroastrian or like Persian kind of context, they would probably be referring to like, you know, a kind of spiritual elevation or a spiritual greatness, or maybe even like a moral greatness or something like that. That's an interesting idea. I hadn't really thought about that, but yeah, etymology is a really, really important, interesting study. It's interesting to think about where words came from. There was a Platonic dialogue. I can't think of which one it was. It was one of the ones I kind of got bored with and didn't finish. But there was one where, as I recall, I think like Plato or whoever was in the dialogue was kind of discussing language and whether it was merely a human construct, or I don't know, it was now that I'm thinking about it, I may go back and read it again because it's a subject that I've kinda gone back to quite a bit, and it would be interesting to see what Plato had to say about it. What are your thoughts about the last episode of Star Wars? That is the kind of question that's more in line with where my head is at right at the moment. A little bit more light, a little bit less, heavy, but it was terrible. Does anyone actually think that the last episode of Star Wars was awesome? I mean, it's that's what happens when entertainment and art becomes nothing but state propaganda. That's all I can say about that. I mean, I've seen a lot of, YouTubers discussing Star Wars, because sometimes I need a break from, like, Kantian deontological ethics and blah, 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 and I need to just, like, watch some lighthearted shit, like, about how Kathleen Kennedy sucks and all this, you know? But I don't think anyone really liked it. Uh, I think some people, like, maybe on the, like, identitarian left are really happy that, there was no white men leads in it or whatever, and it's like, strong, like, women or whatever, and, you had the black stormtrooper and all that, like, that's cool. I think unless you are, like, a diehard, like, actual white supremacist or something, you probably don't care if there's, like, black character or a female character or whatever, as long as they're a good character and the story is good. Like, I mean, a lot of people pointed out that, a lot of sci-fi fans loved the Alien series, and I mean, it had a female lead character. As far as like superhero movies and stuff, a lot of people liked Blade, and it had like Wesley Snipes, a black character. But when I watched the Blade movies, I never really felt like they were making a big deal about race. When I was watching the Alien movies, I never felt like they were making a big deal about gender politics. Whereas when you watch something like the new Star Wars movies, it just seems like they're trying to constantly make political points. And to me, like, I find that just as annoying, whether that's like left wing or right wing, even though I tend to side more with like right wing ideas for the most part. If I was watching a movie and it felt too much like a right-wing propaganda piece, I wouldn't enjoy it. I mean, I wouldn't enjoy it as a movie. I might be like, "Oh, well, that was like a clever, like, way of making a point or whatever." And I think maybe some people on the left feel that way about some of these SJW movies that are coming out now. But I don't think anyone actually enjoys it as an entertainment and experience or as a piece of art or as storytelling or but Star Wars, I don't care about so much. What I'm a little bit more concerned about is The Matrix 4, because we know they're making a Matrix 4, right? And now that the Wachowski brothers are the Wachowski sisters, one of them with pink hair and so on, I am just worried that The Matrix 4 is gonna turn into some kind of weird SJW kinda thing too. And maybe in retrospect, like, someone could make the case maybe that the original Matrix trilogy was all SJW. I think you could probably interpret it that way, but I never did. In any case, if it was kind of SJW propaganda, it was so ambiguous and concealed that, I mean, obviously, a lot of people interpreted it differently. It's mostly people on the right now that are actually using, metaphors from the Matrix about like the red pill and all that kind of stuff. Someone asked, "Am I Rh negative?" Yes, I am Rh negative, and blue eyes. So A negative actually, but I actually did the 23andMe thing a little while back. It turns out I am 99% Anglo-Saxon. Only 99%, so that might blow my chances of joining the Aryan Brotherhood or whatever, but 99%. So the other 1%, apparently I'm 0.8% Native American, which is still more than Elizabeth Warren. And I am 0.1% Asian and 0.1% African. So I guess it's okay for me to say the N word now. But so Odin of Elohim, interesting name, says Star Wars now a giant ad, not a story and agenda, in my opinion. Yeah, I mean, I would tend to agree. I would say that it seems like most movies are coming out now. That's true of. Um, I think maybe part of that is because the woke Twitter mob or whatever is so aggressive and so desperately grasping after straws to like find anything to criticize in anything that comes out that I think some of those people that are producing these movies and stuff, it's like maybe they feel a lot of pressure to be constantly virtue signaling to the point that basically the whole movie or whatever it is they're producing ends up being nothing more than just one big virtue signaling SJW, whatever. But I mean, then again, at the same time, I think they do actually want to spread that kind of propaganda for different reasons. I mean, keep in mind the same people that control Hollywood are the same people that control the international banks and so on too. So someone's asking about upcoming Dune adaptation. I had no idea there was one. Hopefully it's good. Hopefully it's not another SJW propaganda flick. I mean, I will watch anything now. Is like I would rather see something that's completely mindless rather than something that's like pure propaganda. But it seems like just everything's propaganda now. Mhm. So just curious, why did you ask if I was RH negative? You've been reading some stuff about how RH negative people are aliens and that kind of stuff or something like that? I wouldn't rule out the possibility, but, it's I've ended up on the weird side of YouTube more than a few times, and, so I've come across all that kinda stuff. Um, it's interesting, I mean, obviously, I've published some stuff about the ancient Sumerians and all that kinda stuff. It's an area that I'm not afraid to entertain some kinda out there thoughts on, but just because I consider some possibility or speculate again about something doesn't mean that it's a belief that I actually hold. It just means it's something that I find interesting to speculate about. But obviously, there have been a lot of people that have kind of interpreted some of those old Sumerian myths about the Anunnaki and all that kind of stuff as maybe referring to some ancient manipulation of human DNA, or maybe even the creation of some kind of alien human hybrid. Well, keep in mind, I mean, that was in Sumer, that was around the Mesopotamian region. That's, basically the origin of the Caucasian people. So, I mean, if you do take a view like that, then it is pretty reasonable to think that if there is any kind of like hybrid, some kind of hybrid species that's been created, I think you could probably make the case that that might be, the very light-skinned, blue-eyed people that kinda came out of that region, especially the ones that are Rh negative. It it's not something I'm in any position to talk about now because I have been drinking just a few Budweisers, and it's like I've not in any way, like, prepared by looking over stuff or, like, I really just kinda got on to say, that, I'm starting a second channel, follow me there or whatever. I'm really not, like, in the right headspace to have any kind of, like, real deep conversation right now, to be honest. So Okay, Ricardo says all Rh positive are monkey alien hybrids. Okay, that's interesting. That's an interesting thought. I don't know. Oh no, I knew something like this would come up eventually. So Jonathan says, any chance you can tell us who the writers behind the pseudonym Mike Hockney are? Uh, look at the sheer volume of ebooks produced under the name like Mike Hockney or Michael Faust, and there's several others now. I think that just common sense would tell you that if one person sat behind a keyboard and just did nothing but type constantly, uh, they probably wouldn't be able to produce that volume of work. So we're talking about a pseudonym that a group of people is publishing under. Um, and just for a lot of reasons, I kind of avoid talking about that group of people for the most part. Um, just like I don't really have anything. I don't have an axe to grind or anything. Like I don't have anything bad to say about anyone. But then, yeah, I'd rather just let that be. No point, like uh, digging up hatchets that have been buried. But Gustavo says, "Have you ever been to the back rooms?" I have no idea what that means. Um, so Y says Leonardo DiCaprio is Rh negative and his IQ is 177 and he's German. Yeah, well, I mean, from what I've seen, because I have looked into intelligence testing a lot, and it does seem like there is a correlation between blue eyes and high IQ. And of course, there tends to be a correlation between blue eyes and Rh negative blood types as well. Um, Simon asks, do you consider doing a response video to philosophy tube or ContraPoints, etc.? Um, if you send me, for the most part, like every now and then, if someone asks me to respond to something and maybe send a link, I'll usually watch it. If I find it interesting and worth responding to, sometimes I will. But for the most part, I just haven't really wanted to do a lot of response videos. Sometimes I enjoy watching response videos where some YouTuber just kind of like rips on some other YouTuber and just like tears them apart. I have done it a couple of times, for one very special person in particular. Um, but that's not really, for the most part, rather than criticize someone else, which is easy, I would rather try to kind of create something of my own rather than try to destroy what someone else has built. No matter how much of an eyesore it might be, I would rather just try to build something of my own. But ContraPoints, it seems like I have seen a couple of her uh, videos. Uh, they're entertaining, and I think if you can be entertaining, I can disagree with you and still think, oh well, that was like a enjoyable video to watch. Um, like if I hear someone say something that I disagree strongly with, but they say it in a really artful way, uh, where they just say it and they say it really well. Like I'll still, oh wow, they said it really well, and I can still enjoy that. If someone produces a beautiful piece of art or something like that, and they have some type of point that they're trying to make behind it, as long as it's good art, I mean, I'll still enjoy it. My problem is when people are just producing propaganda and putting it out there as art, like with the new Star Wars, to kind of go full circle a little bit. And it's actually not of any kind of artistic or literary value or whatever. Stefan Malahoo? No. Gustavo says, there's no point in responding to people who will just turn their big weapons to you and blast you off the platform. You'll be forgotten faster than Stefan Molyneux. But yeah, I mean, there's some truth to that. There's definitely some truth to that. Now, again, I'm not that worried about it because, again, I don't really make money publishing videos on YouTube. I'm not a professional YouTuber like some of these people are. Um, I mean, I have asked for and accepted usually small donations here and there, but by no means anywhere close to enough to support myself on. So I work full time. If my channel was deleted, um, it wouldn't have any real consequences for me. It would just be like, oh, well, that kind of sucks. There was a lot of videos that I've worked really hard to produce that are no longer there. And people that do enjoy content like the kind that I create are no longer able to enjoy that. And that kind of sucks. But then it's like, I go to work the next day and my life pretty much goes on unchanged. It's not like, oh no, I've lost my YouTube channel. How am I going to eat tomorrow? You know, and I guess because of that, I've tended to be a little bit more fearless. Like I will, there have been a couple of times that I've talked about things knowing full well that that's going to get me a strike or that's going to get the video deleted. And I mean, I'll try to play it reasonably smart. 'Cause if I can help it, I would really prefer not to get the channel deleted. But that is one of the reasons I decided to create the second channel as well. That way, people that enjoy this channel can follow me somewhere else. And then if this channel were to get deleted, then on that channel, I could say, oh, well, I've actually recreated a new channel and re uploaded my own old videos. You can find it here or whatever. So it's kind of a security backup. Plus, it just gives me a chance to do something kind of different. On this channel, just because of the way that it started out, the way it's always kind of been, I feel like unless I'm tackling some kind of like really big issue and I have like some kind of really profound original insight to share, then it's like I might as well not say anything. So just because of the kind of channel that this has become, I'm pretty reluctant to just turn on the camera and just live stream or just kind of talk off the top of my head about whatever's on my mind because I feel like that might kind of diminish some of the other stuff that I've worked really hard to publish. Um, so basically, this channel, Illuminatus Pythagoras, will probably be more classic Illuminatus Pythagoras, more like my published body of work. And then the real Pythagoras, my other channel, it's just kind of be more hangouts, more like ranting, raving, rambling off the top of my head, live streams, answering questions, just real chill, real down to earth, real informal. Let's see. And I'm at an hour and 20 minutes, and honestly, I'm just kind of rambling. I'm surprised anyone's even still here at this point. So I'm going to end the stream, but thanks for all the birthday wishes and stuff. Again, once I end the stream, I'm going to post the link to the second channel I just created. And, please go subscribe over there. I probably will publish more frequently over there, kind of do more just kind of informal live streams and hangouts and stuff like that. And just kind of like publish, short videos that are not too heady. I don't want to say shit posting channel, but just a little bit like more informal, just more of a chill kind of channel. So I am gonna watch some Avengers or something like that on Netflix and then pass the fuck out. So thanks. And yeah, someone pointed out if they search the real Pythagoras, it doesn't show up. Yeah, it probably wouldn't because I just created it. Once it gets into the search algorithms, it probably will, but that's why I'm gonna post the link anyway. But again, thanks everyone for hanging out with me. And thanks for all the birthday wishes. And y'all have a great night. Peace.